When I joined IBM, the board asked me to focus on one short-term objective: save the company. Given my very limited knowledge of IBM at the time, I quite honestly did not know if that could be done. I certainly didn't know how long it might take. Well, with the support and leadership of thousands of people, we did turn the company around. That work and my original mandate was largely completed by the mid-90s. But along the way, something happened, something that quite frankly surprised me. I fell in love with IBM. It's not the falling in love with IBM bit that I find moving. It's the bit that comes later. As much as I meant those words, I now realize that I was always, even to the end, an outsider. My most senior colleagues, who work side by side with me, and deserve as much credit as I do for IBM's renaissance, share a perspective I will never have. They have lived their business careers at IBM. They have seen it all: the glory days, the agony days, the turnaround days. Their roots are deeper than mine, their experience richer. For me, IBM pre-April 1st, 1993 is a mansion full of many rooms without doors, but without doors. I never entered it. I dreaded going into that house. I had to drive change, and I knew that all the reasons not to change were in those rooms. I can recall numerous occasions in the early days when I could outline a change I thought was necessary, and my team would say, "Oh, we tried that before and it didn't work." I couldn't explore the befores, or I'd learn all the reasons not to change. So that excerpt was taken from Lou Gerstner's book, and it includes his farewell letter to all staff confirming his retirement. And in it, he has those words to share about his reflections on his time as CEO of IBM in the 90s. And with that, welcome back to Leaders, a podcast dedicated to exploring the best leaders this world has ever seen. On episode 15 today, we study the man behind IBM's turnaround, Lou Gerstner. And one of the main sources that we have from that includes his book, his memoir, which is titled "Who Says Elephants Can't Dance?" Now let's get right into Lou's path here and his experience that shaped what leader he was at IBM and through his career. And so he does start from a professional standpoint at McKinsey, and he calls it an extension of education, skill development after he got his Harvard MBA. He really reflects on it and saying that it helped him understand what it takes to take apart a business. He further quotes and says, "The most important thing I learned at McKinsey was the detailed process of understanding the underpinnings of a company." McKinsey was obsessive about deep analysis of a company's marketplace, its competitive position, and its strategic direction. And I think this background in consulting and that strategic deep dives in companies, and then each leader kind of reflecting on that, I draw parallels to episode 12, Indra Nooyi, and she really highlights her consulting background and career that helped her shape and become a great CEO. So after McKinsey, he joins American Express in 1978 and heads its travel-related services unit. Under his leadership, their market share increased significantly by 1985. Achieved this by finding new uses and users for the card, such as college students, physicians, and women, as well as persuading corporations to adopt the card as a more effective way of tracking business expenses. He also created exclusive versions of the card for higher-end clients, such as the gold and platinum cards. As sales and profits rebounded, Gerstner was promoted to chairman and CEO of Amex's travel-related services in 1982 and president of the parent company in 1985. And then as chairman and CEO, he spearheaded its successful membership has its privileges promotion. Not only was the division continually the most profitable in the company, it also led the entire financial services industry. Despite these successes, he hit a ceiling at American Express, as Chief Executive James D. Robinson III was not expected to retire for another 12 years. During his 11-year tenure at American Express membership had increased from 8.6 million to 30.7 million. He left Amex in 1989 to succeed Ross Johnson as chairman and chief executive of RJR Nabisco following its $25 billion leverage buyout by KKR, Kohlberg, Kravis, and Roberts. He was then hired as chairman and CEO of IBM in April 1993, first IBM CEO hired from outside the firm. He does call himself an outsider. He also does quote in saying that he really did not have any technology experience going into it. So definitely an outsider. One of the strategic visions that he set for IBM in 1983 was to make its e-business its heart and soul. Believed in the potential of B2B e-commerce and wanted to expand the application of the internet to more than just web page browsing and consumer marketing. Argued that a network-centric approach would shift the workload from personal computers to larger enterprise software systems and allow the internet to be embedded into all aspects of business operations. IBM's initial vision for how e-business could transform the world included electronic debit services that would allow customers to place orders online and eventually shop at virtual stores, creating virtual databases of movies, books, and music that would be available from anywhere in the world. He announced e-business as their growth strategy and formed the IBM Internet Division. In 1996, their marketing department established the term e-business for any kind of business or commercial transaction conducted over the internet. Under Gerstner, e-business transformed IBM, and within 6 years, they became the market leader in providing the products and services needed to transform any of their customer businesses into a network-centric e-business. And more about when he arrives at the company in April 1993. And at this time, IBM is I guess losing some market share, losing it to competition. Lots of technology players in the space right now. So he had to really think about how to strategize and pivot their company. So when an active plan was in place to disaggregate the company in April 1983, the prevailing wisdom of the time held that IBM's core mainframe business was headed for obsolescence, had to cut cost by 50%. The company's own management was in the process of allowing its various divisions to rebrand and manage themselves, the so-called baby blues. Then CEO John Akers decided that the logical and rational solution was to split IBM into autonomous business units, such as processors, storage, software, services, printers, that could compete more effectively with competitors that were more focused and agile and had lower cost structures. Gerstner reversed this plan, realizing from his previous experiences at RJR and American Express that there remained a vital need for a broad-based information technology integrator. He discovered that the biggest problem that all major companies faced in 1993 was integrating all the separate computing technologies that were emerging at the time, and saw that IBM's unique competitive advantage was its ability to provide integrated solutions for customers, a company that could represent more than piece parts or components, something he only learned by going beyond just listening to the proponents of different technologies within IBM. His choice to keep the company together was the defining decision of his tenure, as these gave IBM the capabilities to deliver complete IT solutions to customers. Services could be sold as an add-on to companies that had already bought IBM computers. And that singular decision, and we always kind of reference that leaders are brought in to make, small but very, I guess, rather infrequent but very large decisions. And you can pinpoint that one in that it went against conventional wisdom. And a big what if would be what if he just went along with what the old guard had set up in terms of a business structure. Who knows if IBM would still be around today, or if it would have got bought by someone else. So interesting to kind of think of his key decision to pivot that. So he described the turnaround as difficult, often wrenching for an IBM culture that had become insular and balkanized. After he arrived, over 100,000 employees were laid off from a company that had maintained a lifetime employment practice from its inception, long allowed by their managers to believe that employment security had little reference to performance. Thousands of IBM employees had grown lax, while the top performing employees complained bitterly in attitude surveys. In the goal to create one common brand message for all IBM products and services around the world, under his leadership, the company consolidated its many advertising agencies down to just Ogilvy and Mather. Layoffs and other tough management measures continued in the first 2 years of his tenure, but the company was saved and business success has continued to grow steadily since then. And really what he wanted to do to change a lot of this was to reconnect with customers and deliver what they want. And he ultimately blew up a bunch of their processes and decided that change in every process in the company and that they're way too decentralized. And he pegged a change in culture to a change in processes, change what people value and how you reward. From 1993 to Gerstner's retirement in 2002, IBM's market cap rose from $29 billion to $168 billion. He said 99% of management is required, 10 to 20% is emotional. Great leaders imbue organizations with emotional commitment, a sense of achievement and challenge. Learn how to communicate, manage your time. Competitive analysis are skills over a lifetime. And so he had his success within IBM, as you can see, kind of just briefly outlining his career. And next we will dive into a little bit more of examples of each of his different leadership styles that shone through, particularly in his time at IBM. And so one interesting thing to lead off with here is that I think the last 2 or 3 episodes we've done, in terms of leadership style, there are definitely ones that scream visionary. Walt Disney, the last episode, definitely is one of the qualities for which Walt Disney, Steve Jobs, a few of these other leaders that we've studied really had the vision and executed that vision of what they saw either within the company or within the landscape of the industry or the world as a whole. So they were visionaries in every right within that regard. Upon becoming chief executive of IBM, Gerstner declared the last thing IBM needs right now is a vision, as he instead focused on execution, decisiveness, simplifying the organization for speed, and breaking the gridlock. Many expected heads to roll, yet Gerstner initially changed only the CFO, the HR chief, and 3 key line executives. His tenure as CEO of IBM showcased the power of effective leadership in times of crisis. He prioritized practicality over dogma, customer needs over internal politics, and adaptability over tradition. His story is a testament to how a visionary leader can redefine a company's trajectory by aligning its strengths with the changing demands of the market. His legacy remains an enduring example of business acumen and strategic thinking. More so summarized by his management philosophy. And so he kind of summarizes his philosophy and practice as managing by principle, not procedure. The marketplace dictates everything we should do. I'm a big believer in quality, strong competitive strategies and plans, teamwork, payoff for performance, and ethical responsibility. I look for people who work to solve problems and help colleagues. I sack politicians. I am heavily involved in strategy. The rest is yours to implement. Just keep me informed. In an informal way, don't hide bad information. I hate surprises. Don't try to blow things by me. Solve problems laterally. Don't keep bringing them up the line. Move fast. If we make mistakes, let them be because we are too fast rather than too slow. Hierarchy means very little to me. Let's put together in meetings the people who can help solve a problem, regardless of position. Reduce committees and meetings to a minimum. No committee decision making. Let's have lots of candid, straightforward communications. I don't completely understand the technology. I'll need to learn it, but don't expect me to master it. The unit leaders must be the translators into business terms for me. So just an incredible philosophy there in terms of just acknowledging coming into it. He didn't really have much experience from the technology sense or just even within the industry. And he really leaned heavily on the kind of experts and unit leaders within IBM to get him there and to help him make informed decisions, really honing in on velocity. I think a lot of great parallels here, and we'll see this within the Mentors Heroes section. I think too, episode 3 covered off on Jack Welch, and I think a similar time for which Jack Welch was at GE, and he encountered kind of the same principles, philosophies, same type of challenges in terms of workforce, changes within the marketplace, what they had to do to adapt the system and the business to sustain. One other thing that he did that I think is also a common thread within a lot of these leaders is to really get out and understand the customer. And so he announced a operation called Operation Bear Hug. Each of the 50 members of the senior management team was to visit a minimum of 5 of our biggest customers during the next 3 months. It was an important way for me to emphasize that we were going to build a company from the outside in, and that the customer was going to drive everything we did in the company. It created quite a stir. And when people realized that I really did read every one of the reports, there was quick improvement and action and responsiveness. Because I believe all high-performance companies are led and managed by principles, not by process. Decisions need to be made by leaders who understand the key drivers of success. So from a management philosophy perspective, let's translate that into also some guiding IBM leadership principles. So in September 1993, he wrote out 8 principles that he thought ought to be the underpinnings of IBM's new culture and sent them to all IBM employees worldwide in a special mailing. In reading them over now, I am struck by how much of the culture change of the following 10 years they describe. Here are the principles in an abbreviated version of how I described each. So I'm just going to kind of list out the 8 here. The marketplace is the driving force behind everything we do. 2, at our core, we are a technology company with an overriding commitment to quality. 3, our primary measures of success are customer satisfaction and shareholder value. 4, we operate as an entrepreneurial organization with a minimum of bureaucracy and a never-ending focus on productivity. 5, we never lose sight of our strategic vision. 6, we think and act with a sense of urgency. 7, outstanding, dedicated people make it all happen, particularly when they work together as a team. And 8, we are sensitive to the needs of all employees and to the communities in which we operate. And then a few, so those are leadership principles that he instilled. So those can be principles, but you also need things that are inherent to the leaders and the qualities that you would want to execute those principles. And so that brings us into what he views as IBM leadership competencies. And so just to quickly list these out: a focus to win, customer insight, breakthrough thinking, drive to achieve, mobilize to execute, team, leadership, straight talk, teamwork, decisiveness, sustained momentum, building organizational capability, coaching, dedication, the core passion of the business. And then that also leads into the IBM mantra that he has that builds upon some of these competencies. So thinking back to the senior management meeting earlier that year, my answer was quick: win, execute, and team. These three words captured the commitments I had teed up at the meeting, and they summed up the most important criteria I thought all IBMers needed to apply in setting their goals. Win. It was vital that all IBMers understood that business is a competitive activity. There are winners and losers. In the new IBM, there would be no place for anyone who lacked zeal for the contest. Most crucially, the opponent is out there, not across the Armonk campus. We needed to make the marketplace the driving criterion for all of our actions and all of our behavior. Execute. This was all about speed and discipline. There would be no more of the obsessive perfectionism that had caused us to miss market opportunities and let others capitalize on our discoveries. No more studying things to death. In the new IBM, successful people would commit to getting things done fast and effectively. Team. This was a commitment to acting as one IBM, plain and simple. And then a few more qualities, I think, from a leadership side that he wanted people at IBM, as well as something that he exhibited himself. So from a communication sense, so he was a gifted communicator who was always able to connect with people at all levels of the organization, able to explain complex business concepts in a way that was easy to understand and able to motivate people to follow. For example, when Gerstner took over IBM, he gave a speech to the company's employees in which he laid out the vision for the future. He spoke in plain language that everyone could understand. He was able to rally the employees to get behind his plan. You've seen it with decision making, so being a decisive leader, not afraid to make tough decisions, willing to take risks. For example, he decided to sell off some of the company's non-core businesses when he took over IBM. Risky decision, but necessary to make them more focused and profitable. Integrity. So he was an honest and ethical leader who was respected by his employees and customers. He was known for his integrity and commitment to doing the right thing. He found that the company had been engaging in some questionable business practices when he took over IBM. He immediately ordered an investigation into these practices, and he took steps to ensure that they did not happen again. As a result, IBM regained trust of its customers and employees. So while he had success from an IBM turnaround standpoint, there were definitely failures along the way, and we wanted to highlight those quickly here too. So despite his success, he presided over the company's decline relative to newer rivals, as it lost its once dominant position in the IT industry. Microsoft grew beyond just PC software in the 1990s. The hardware companies Apple and Dell expanded their market share, and entirely new entities such as the Google search engine emerged and created new computer-based business empires. He was the first highly paid IBM CEO relative to his homegrown predecessors, earning a personal fortune, hundreds of millions in the role. His philosophy quoted as the importance of managers being aligned with shareholders, not through risk-free instruments like stock options, but through the process of putting their own money on the line through direct ownership of the company, became a critical part of the management philosophy he brought to IBM. And that was kind of criticized for IBM's management in the late 2000s, becoming fully isolated and immune from the long-term consequences of their decisions. The acquisition that he had of Lotus Development Corporation, so in 1995, acquired Lotus for $3.5 billion. At the time, they were a leading maker of software for personal computers, but it was struggling to compete with Microsoft. The acquisition was seen as a way for IBM to get in the software business, but ultimately it can be seen as a failure. It never turned a profit, and eventually it was sold off 3 years later in 1998. The launch of the OS2 operating system, so in 1987, they launched that as a competitor to Microsoft Windows. It was technically a superior operating system, but it was not as user-friendly as Windows, so it never really gained widespread adoption. And then finally, decision to outsource manufacturing. I think a lot of the bigger companies did this from a cost perspective, of course, but he decided much of their manufacturing Outsourced third-party companies overseas. Decision was made in an effort to cut costs, but it led to job losses and a decline in quality. They eventually reversed course and brought some of its manufacturing back in-house. And then finally, to cover off on this episode here, we will go into mentors and heroes. So Lou Gerstner, the book would never have appeared without the heroes among my IBM colleagues who helped me restore IBM to a position of leadership. In many respects, this is their book as much as it is mine. There are many such leaders, but clearly among the most important were Denny Welsh and Sam Palmisano, who built our services company, John Thompson, who created our software group. So those people who he instilled confidence in as he came along with the company and took the lead at IBM, the people that led the businesses alongside of him, he felt as leaders in their own rights. Episode 10 was Andy Grove, and Lou being at IBM, Andy Grove being at Intel. Obviously, competition there in the same space somewhat. So one encounter was Lou had a meeting with Andy Grove, which was perhaps the most focused. In his wonderfully direct style, Andy delivered the message that IBM had no future in the microprocessor business, that we should stop competing with Intel with our PowerPC chip. And then unless this happened, relationship between the two companies were going to be difficult. I thanked Andy, but having no real understanding at that point what we should do, I tucked the message away. What IBM needs right now is a series of very tough-minded, market-driven, highly effective strategies for each of its businesses. Strategies that deliver performance in the marketplace and shareholder value, and that's what we're working on. Now, the number one priority is to restore the company to profitability. I mean, if you're going to have a vision for a company, the first frame of that vision better be that you're making money and that the company has got its economics correct as a kind of response to that too. A few others here were John Opel. Served as a mentor during his transition to the role. He taught him the importance of customer focus and the need to adapt to the change. As we mentioned, episode 3 was Jack Welch. Jack was the CEO of GE. He was known for his business acumen and leadership style. Gerstner met him at a business conference, struck up a friendship. He mentored him on how to be a more effective leader, also helped him develop his strategic thinking skills. Peter Drucker, who's a kind of renowned management consultant, I think maybe also mentioned by Andy Grove as an influence. So most influential thinkers on business management. So Gerstner read his books earlier in his career, later met him and sought his advice on a number of business challenges, taught him about the importance of long-term thinking, customer focus, and the need to adapt to change. Being competitors with Microsoft too, he felt that Bill Gates was one of the most successful people that he met. Met him through a mutual friend, been friends ever since, mentored him on a variety of topics, including technology, business strategy, and philanthropy. And then a few heroes, he also mentions a few times in the book Thomas J. Watson. So Watson was the founder of IBM, considered to be one of the most important figures in the history of the computer industry. Really admired his vision, leadership, and commitment to excellence. And then Albert Einstein, so he really admired his intelligence, creativity, and ability to think outside the box. And then General George S. Patton, finally here, was a general in the U.S. Army during World War II. Gerstner admired his charisma, determination, and ability to inspire others. And so Lou Gerstner here, another great leader through those kind of formidable technology years in the 90s. Definitely some parallels to the style that he exhibits with maybe Jack Welch, Lee Iacocca. It is kind of easier, I think, to compare his leadership style and maybe some of the results that he got with a lot of the leaders that were in his era, and also exhibited great charisma and great leadership qualities in order to come into a CEO position and really turn around a company that was close to the brink of death, or really just trending in that way with poor performance, products that needed to be eliminated, things like that. So definitely another business great to study on what it took to really turn that business around. And ultimately, it relies heavily on a great leadership style to exhibit and get the company and the employees and everyone around it, customer-wise, bought into their vision, or even lack of vision, or just focus on the right things for the short term. And one thing I think differently that he did was that he realized that right away it wasn't about kind of painting what they needed to do 3, 5, 10 years down the road. It was really a matter of digging into the business and what needed to be done in the short term from an operational and execution side to really right size the ship so that they could be sustainable over time. So again, Lou Gerstner here, episode 15, CEO of IBM in the 90s. Just a great person to study from a leadership style here. So with that is episode 15, and hope to be back with episode 16 here shortly. Thanks.